This is Newsline. I'm Michael Chagani. Tonight, a very special guest, Mr. Chief Executive Donald Tsang. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, for being on this show. You and I have known each other for a very long time, and this is your farewell interview with us, and I thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview. Now, there are many things I want to ask you, Mr. Chief Executive. You've been a Chief Executive for 7 years. You've been in government for over 40 years. So there are many, many things I do want to ask you. But the pressing issue now, as we talk on this day, a very special day, may I say, is that a big controversy is now swirling around your successor, Mr. Leung Chun-ying. He has his scandals involving illegal structures. You have had your share of scandals lately, illegal structure, you know, hotels and so on. We all know that. Are we, even before Mr. Siva Leung takes over, he's taking over today, but are we facing a government crisis here, Mr. Chief Executive?
I believe, Michael, Hong Kong people are very sensible. They know that nobody is perfect. And particularly, you look at a person from different perspectives, and each and every one may come to a different conclusion on what happens and what should happen and so on, and what they should expect the Chief Executive to do or not to do. The most important thing is if something erupts out of the blue, my own reaction, and I think the same applies to CY, is to tell the public as soon as possible what it's all about, as fully as possible. I try my best to do it over the media.
Has he done it? Has he told as fully as possible?
I think he has done it very quickly. He has shown people, he has told people what had happened, and he has shown people his house and so on. I think he's tried to be very best to be candid. But the important thing is what we're going to do about it. If we look at this thing in a positive light, and I try to, I have now looked at what happened to me for the last 3 months, and I'm almost devoid of any conspiratorial theories now. I am now coming to a conclusion that happened because you're Chief Executive, and people have high expectations of you. And what is important is to recognize that what we have learned from this, and particularly if there is any defects in the system, and how we can improve upon it to make sure this thing will not happen again. So in my case, as you know, I asked 2 separate sets of people to look at 2 sets of so-called scandals independently and try to improve upon our system. And I think we must give CY a chance to run Hong Kong. I think he has tried his very best to be candid and explain how these things happened, and that he's tried to make amends as quickly as possible.
When your scandals happened, Mr. Chief Executive,
scandals.
Well, the scandals, so-called scandals happened. There was a trust issue, a confidence issue, and a governance issue. It hurt governance. This is now happening to your successor, Mr. Siva Leung. Is he going to have a governance issue? Is it going to hurt his governance? The confidence in him has gone down. Nobody can deny that.
Well, I'm afraid you are in a very high position, and there's a very vulnerable position for anyone, in that you are the top of the government. The only way you can climb is to downwards rather upwards. If that's the case, it's a high wires act, and whatever happens to you, and if it's a negative event, then you expect something to happen to you in a negative way. But do not exaggerate it. There's something which is a matter of great fundamental points of principle, or the impact on the core values, and particularly on the question of fundamental governing authority. As I said, it is, of course, these things will be looked at by various authorities in a very proper fashion. The important thing is
should it be looked
forward.
at? Do you think there should be looked at?
It's automatic. Hong Kong is a very law-abiding thing. If there is anything which is against the law, then of course it will be looked at, and a proper remedy will
and
be
you agree
effected.
with that?
Well, it is perfectly all right. I'm sure everyone will have to agree with that. But the important thing is don't imagine things, don't fabricate things, and not particularly blame people for things for which there's no restrictions. Because I expect you to do better than that. Of course, I think he can do this. And as chief executive, he would accept that people have high expectations of him. And there comes to some point we have to appreciate and to be empathetic to feelings of that kind. But the important thing is I trust Hong Kong people. And at the end of the day, they would pass the right judgment.
Okay, this is interesting. I'm going to move away from there. I'm going to ask you, you talked about high expectations. The people expected high expectations of you. Now, are the people of Hong Kong setting unrealistically high standards for leaders like yourself?
I think every open society are facing this issue in that they would have very high expectations of their people in power, people who are very rich, and people who are very popular, for instance. There's movie stars, one thing,
right,
and the billionaires and heads of government. Obviously, they carry some extra unquantifiable responsibility for the people and for the community in which they live. And they will naturally have very high expectations of you. In other words, they ask you to do things that expire a certain standard, which they themselves will not be able to deliver.
Too high? Are we asking
no,
too high?
I don't think you can do this, pass people to do this. And particularly, this is not an absolute standard. Everyone have different standards. If I ask Michael Chugani, what do you think about this thing? Has he done something wrong? He may have certain judgment. If I ask someone who lives in a partitioned room in a China old tenement building, he may have a different idea what it should be. It should be much higher. And then you ask someone, for instance, is someone in government, a leaders elsewhere, how that behavior should be judged. So this is totally acceptable in my country. So it has to be looked at from a point of view, not from our own judgment, where it's fair or not fair, but look at how generally the people whom you serve are feeling and reacting to the situation. So whether we like it or not, you cannot just say that, well, people are being unfair, they judge me against a standard which nobody would achieve.
Were people unfair to you? Because you were judged on some staying in expensive hotels and so on, but you yourself said in the Legislative Council that your predecessors did the same thing. Were you unfairly treated?
No, I don't. As I said, well, fairness is not the right sort of measure for politicians. As I said,
your predecessors did it, so...
Hey, my predecessor lived in a different time zone. I live in a different time zone. Community has moved on. Public sentiments have changed. So I just can't blame, well, with hindsight, oh yes, Michael, well, I've done nothing wrong. Mr. Pattons lived...
Do you still believe you did something wrong?
No, I think I have appreciated this public sentiments against it. The fact that...
But in your heart, do you think you did something wrong?
Well, let me tell you, in my heart, I have, you see, I apologize for it. Not that I believe that I have done something which is against the rule or against the law, but I feel that I've heard some people who thought that I was spending too much money. And these are the people whom I respect, whom I govern, and for that reason I have to listen. So,
and you did listen.
I have listened, and then we have now changed our own system, make it more rigorous, and I'm sure the similar things will not happen in the future.
Well, let's move on here now. You know, I've asked you before in the previous interview whether you had failed the people. That was some years back. I'm going to ask you now, as you leave this job as chief executive after serving for 7 years, what would you say was your biggest failure and your biggest success as chief executive?
Well, Michael, our life is like an open book as a chief executive, and it is very invidious for myself to judge what I believe is my great success and what my
You
great
must have
failures.
had a success you're proud of, or a failure that you say, I wish I'd done it differently.
Well, I don't ask that question anymore, but I can recall certain things which I feel were exhilarated when it happened. For instance, when in 2007, when we secure a timetable for universal suffrage.
Democracy. I knew you would say that. That was a great achievement.
Well, I don't know. Some probably regard it as achievement. Some probably regard it as a monumental disaster. Well,
I don't think it was a disaster. I think it was an achievement.
Well, I'm just telling you, there's a whole spectrum of opinions in the community which I respect. And then I must remember that I must say that it was a very exhilarating moment. And then in 2010, I still recall that when we passed the statutory minimum wage for workers, I was almost in tears, and I thought that was a major breakthrough for the community. And it's not myself; it's everybody worked hard.
Well, what about your failure? Then? What do you think was your failure?
See, there are daily chores. There are things which I could, as you say, that could be done in different sort of ways. But there are a few things.
Well, the rich-poor gap.
Yes. Okay. Since you mentioned this is very much on my mind. This is something which not easy to address, particularly in a capitalistic society. And we have a structural issue of having to allow 150 very poor and skilled people to enter every day into Hong Kong. That comes to 50,000 every year, and multiplied by a number of years, they become a big chunk of the total population. And they have no bargaining power in terms of wages. They are not entitled to social benefits, and they are difficult for them to scrape through a living in Hong Kong. We try to help as much as we can, but at the same time, we have the most able, most competent people in certain financial sector, for instance, who come from all parts of the world and settle here. Here comes the Gulf, and this is, I cannot. On the one hand, I cannot drive this grassroots people away from coming to Hong Kong, because I do believe we need some fresh blood into the community. On the other hand, I'm not in a position. I'm not going to drive away those bright sparks from Hong Kong, who contribute to our economy, who contribute to job creation.
Okay.
And for that reason, we have this gap which is built in, and the thing you can do, of course, you can redress it by taxation, getting money from this group and give it to the others. But this group is exceedingly mobile. They can move away. And then what do you do? So this is something which, in my mind, what I hope really that my successor will find the right recipe for this.
We'll pick it up. See you soon. Don't go away.